In the event of an emergency, there will be both audible and visual alarms. You will be directed to leave the venue by a pre-recorded message. Upon hearing any evacuation message, you must leave the building immediately, following the signs to your nearest exit before proceeding to the designated assembly point. Thank you for your attention.
We're on. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the PCST conference. I just want to give a few announcements before we get started for the day, and I hope those of you who were maybe at karaoke last night or those of you at the whiskey tasting are all feeling okay this morning. I saw most of you on the bus, so that is good. I hope you enjoyed your first day at the conference. I wanted to just let everybody know that when you are having your lunch, that there are some tables downstairs outside of the room. So please feel free to take some food to those if you prefer to sit down. I know there's some tables in the space, but there's some more downstairs as well, just outside the room, so you can take them there. To let you know that the PCST AGM will take place at lunchtime today, so if you are coming along to that, please make your way back up here and encourage as many people as possible to attend that. For those of you attending the conference dinner this evening, it is an informal dinner which will take place at the University of Aberdeen campus, and the dinner is full, so we're asking people, if you haven't booked a ticket, we can't guarantee that anyone else can get in. It has been hugely oversubscribed, which is really, really good. There's over 300 people attending this evening. So just to give you a heads up on that, because I know some people have been asking about spaces for the conference dinner this evening. I think that is all of the announcements I need to give this morning. So I'm going to hand over for our first plenary. Well, we've got a plenary talk this morning. We've got a plenary panel this afternoon. And we've got some great plenary speakers tomorrow as well. So I'm going to hand over to Germana, who's going to introduce. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Germana Barata, researcher and science journalist at the State University of Campinas in Brazil, and a member of the scientific committee of PCST. I hope everyone's feeling great and that some of you are able to be here with us after the whiskey tasting that I couldn't attend. Considering the people with visual loss that might be present, I'll make my self-description. I am a Brazilian woman born in the mid-1970s, tall with long dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a black long-sleeve blouse and gray trousers. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Professor and Dr. Sarita Albagli, a distinguished researcher at the Brazilian Institute of Information in Science and Technology, a research unit under Brazil's Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. Dr. Albagli holds a degree in sociology and a PhD in geography, and she was a visiting senior fellow at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Sorry. Of course. Sorry, everyone. Dr. Sarita has been at the forefront of advancing open science, exploring its transformative potential to democratize access to scientific knowledge. Her research contributions spans scholarly communication, science information, and science communication. her work emphasizes the roles of citizen science, social innovation, and sustainable, locally driven development, particularly in addressing social, environmental, and climate-related challenges, integrating indigenous and traditional knowledge systems. Dr. Sarita Albagli leads the Laboratory of Research in Open Science and Citizen Innovation. She coordinates the citizen science platform called CIVIS in Brazil and serves as head of the National Institute of Citizen Science. So please join me in welcoming Professor Sarita Albagli.
Good morning. I'm sorry I will read, just to be a bit more objective in my speech. So thank you very much for the invitation to this event, especially to Germana Barata for suggesting my name to be here and the kind words about me. This is my first time participating in the PCST conference, and I am excited to connect our work and discussions on open and citizen science with the conference themes. From what I heard yesterday's sessions that I could attend, there are many points of contact and concerns in our research agendas. In my presentation, I propose some topics for debates on concepts, roles, and methods of citizen science, which I believe bridge the themes of this conference: transitions, traditions, and tensions in PST. These topics are also of special interest to our research group at the Open Science and Citizen Innovation Laboratory, the CINDALab. Our starting point has been the ethical political challenge proposed by the Colombian sociologist Orlando Faz-Borda. What kind of knowledge do we want and need? What is scientific knowledge intended for, and who benefits or will benefit or be damaged eventually from it? So to this challenge, we add the following questions. Citizen science for what, for whom, by whom, and above all, under what conditions? Let's start with the concept. The contribution of so-called amateurs to science, that is, those who are interested in science but did not have specific training to practice it, has been observed at least since the 19th century. The term scientist only appeared in the first half of that century, coinciding with the beginning of the professionalization of scientific activity, intensifying in the middle of the 20th century. But citizen science is a recent term. It began to be used in the 80s and 90s and has expanded in the last 2 decades of this century, associated with a set of factors which I will present briefly, as part of the expansion of the open science movements, the process of datafication and digitalization of science, the reframing of the meaning of citizenship and a new rights agenda, the challenge posed by the social environmental crisis and health emergencies. Citizen science encompasses various conceptions, practices, and methodologies. It is a polysemic term that allows for different interpretations and definitions. It depends on who mobilizes it, their motivations, perspectives, and backgrounds. It has a situated and contextual character. Its uses and meanings have changed and expanded from data collection to co-production and participatory research. Other expressions, such as community science, participatory science, public engagement in science, citizen data generation, among others, have been used in a similar way, but with semantic distinctions. Many initiatives do not necessarily call themselves citizen science, but they can be understood as part of the same field. Several terms have also been used to describe those who participate in citizen science projects, besides professional scientists, such as citizen scientists, non-scientists, lay people, amateurs, volunteers, and more generic terms, such as participants, contributors, collaborators, communities, public stakeholders, among others. There are also semantic differences and also a strong debate on these terms and their use. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, definition of 2014, citizen science is, quoted, scientific work undertaken by members of the general public, often in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists and scientific institutions. Alan Weary, one of the precursors of the concept, criticized that definition for a set of aspects. First, because citizen science does not necessarily begin as a scientific work. Second, because it can be led by a community or social group seeking answers to their own questions. And third, because the term general public induces a notion of a homogeneous public not contemplating the social diversity and different interests involved in citizen science. Since the term came into use in the 80s and 90s, two main perspectives have defined the debate on citizen science. One approach emphasizes the importance of mobilizing social contribution to collect, record, and eventually analyze data in a crowdsourcing mode. Science increasingly demands large volumes of heterogeneous and territorially dispersed data. Relying solely on scientific teams to accomplish these tasks may not be sufficient. Citizen science is aimed at reducing costs and improving the speed, scope, and volume of research results. This is what we call a pragmatic or instrumental perspective of citizen science. Another approach emphasizes promoting greater porosity and dialogue between science and other knowledge spaces and actors from a more participatory, bottom-up, and co-production perspective. It values community and social groups' contribution to problem formulation and problem solving and social innovation. This is what we call a more democratic perspective of citizen science. The focus here is not on speed and quantity, but on the slow pace of listening and mutual learning leading to qualitative change in the type of knowledge we produce. By involving communities and affected populations from the beginning and at various stages of research, citizen science may contribute to achieving more robust research results and the greater social impact of public policies. These two approaches are not necessarily opposed. They can be complementary. Emergency and risk situations, such as the COVID pandemic and the climate emergency, require a quick response, but also time for dialogue between different knowledge matrices. But there are certainly important points of attention and tension within and between these two perspectives of citizen science. And this involves recognizing that citizen science often takes place in controversial and conflicting arenas. On this slide, we see different types and levels of participation in citizen science projects as proposed by the researcher Muki Aklai, from crowdsourcing, distributed intelligence, participatory science, and to what he called extreme citizen science, involving populations that are not usually included in this kind of projects and initiative. However, one of the reasons for the recent mobilization of citizen science is to confront the planetary socio-environmental crisis. The crisis has demanded that science consider the contribution of other knowledge regimes, especially the knowledge of traditional and ancestral communities and peoples, mainly from the Biodiversity Convention, which was signed in 1992. This does not mean scientifically validating the knowledge of these peoples and communities, but considering how different knowledge practices and systems can learn from each other. However, the idea of sustainable development and of a common future expresses just an apparent consensus. There are many controversies about the causes, responsibilities, and effects of the crisis and its solutions. The consequences of the crisis are unevenly distributed among countries, regions, and social groups. Tackling them often involves divergent positions and development styles. There are disputes between environmental protection and nature exploitation forces, sometimes violent, particularly in scenarios of high social inequality and political vulnerability. The Amazon region, where we have done extensive field work, is a living example of these dilemmas. On the slides, there are Brazilian indigenist Bruno Pereira and British journalist Dom Phillips, murdered in 2022 in the Amazon state due to their work helping indigenous peoples protect the rainforest from illegal fishing and hunting. The photo also shows Bruno's work teaching indigenous peoples to use computational tools and social cartography in support of their fight to protect their lands. Of course, many local leaders, indigenous local communities have been attacked and murdered all these years. A central issue is to what extent does the pressure for alternative development styles lead science to be permeable to other values and practices? Western scientific paradigms have promoted invisibility of other and more diverse scientific trajectories and types of knowledge that could lead to more sustainable development roads. And this does not only have to do with the strict field of disinterested science, but with the set of economic and geopolitical interests that also influence research agendas. This point was highlighted in our first panel in this conference. Citizen science has also been mobilized to contribute to the social appropriation of science and to scientific and environmental education in more dialogic forms beyond the deficit model of traditional scientific communication. This has gained importance due to science misinformation and disinformation campaigns, also object of a panel in this conference, such as climate change denial and anti-vaccine campaigns, with the spread not only fake news, but also fake science. This has also been a topic of significant conflict and controversy. In this context, the notion of citizenship is reinterpreted, and citizen science must be seen as part of historical and emerging agendas of struggles for rights, especially the right to research, proposed by the Indian anthropologist Arjun Appadurai, meaning to democratize the ways and competences to produce and make use of knowledge, information, and data to expand social influence in public policies, especially of minoritized groups, communities at risk, and in social vulnerability conditions. His definition of right to research as the right to the tools through which any citizen can systematically increase that stock of knowledge which they consider most vital to their survival as human beings and to their claims as citizens. Some of citizen science initiatives have been connected to data activism, counter-hegemonic and anti-colonial fights for climate, cognitive, and data justice. Latin America has a long history of conceptualizations and experiments in this field. To name a few, we have the pedagogy of the oppressed of the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, the participatory action research, again, of the Colombian sociologist Orlando Faz-Borda, the decolonial perspective of several authors, such as the Peruvian Aníbal Quijano, the Argentines Henrique Dussel, Walter Mignolo, the anti-colonial thought of indigenous, quilombola, Afro-descendant, feminist, and intersectional authors, such as André Baniwa, Ailton Krenak, Antônio Bispo dos Santos, Nego Bispo, and Lélia Gonzalez, just to mention a few authors in Brazil. Therefore, citizen science should not serve as an instrument to depoliticize conflicts, but rather as a device that contributes to giving visibility and voice to different points of view and help to promote power structures shifts in science, or in general. At the same time, it is important to recognize that citizen science and other participatory approaches are not sufficient to subvert information, knowledge, and power asymmetries. This is part of a set of fights that must be connected to these methodologies and approaches. This set of questions has connected citizen science with other open science movements, promoting their mutual influence. In 2021, UNESCO developed a set of recommendations based on a broad consultation process to provide an international framework for open science policies and practices. Among the 4 pillars of these recommendations, 2 are related to citizen science: open participation of social actors and open dialogue with other knowledge systems. On the one hand, it expands the notion of openness, of open science, beyond open access to scientific literature and open research data. And yesterday we had here a panel about this subject. On the other hand, it reinforces the need to adopt protocols to deal with unequal and hierarchical positions within citizen science initiatives, considering cultural, social, and technological asymmetries, and above all, regimes of authority and certification in science. This requires going beyond the FAIR principle in research data management, that data be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. It also requires attention to the CARE principles, proposed by indigenous peoples associations: collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. This implies a set of protocols, such as adopting free, prior, and informed consent, returning research results to the participants, and ensuring fair and equitable benefits sharing among other protocols, and many issues such as intellectual property rights, privacy in data. It's not just how to collect data, but how to store it, how to give access to it, and the capabilities to use them. Open infrastructures are also crucial, considering citizen science projects' growing use of digital tools, such as mobile phone applications, recording, measuring, and sensing devices, and digital platforms and large data repositories. The problem of where to storage, the kind of access, the policies in terms of data repositories is a very big issue nowadays. While these devices enable increased data production and recording in a decentralized manner, helping to democratize information and knowledge, they also pose risks. They usually have user-friendly interfaces, but little transparency about their operating and profitability strategies. Artificial intelligence, as we know, brings new possibilities, but also risks. We understand, therefore, infrastructure from the perspective of the social studies of science and technology, not as mere substrate, but as part of social technical arrangements. The governance systems of these infrastructures and the contents that circulate through them are a central issue. Despite the open and free source movements, there is an increasing dependence on proprietary digital infrastructures dominated by large international corporations. Science in general, and citizen science in particular, are embedded in the emerging platform economy, or platform capitalism, which is a business model based on the control of digital platforms by big tech companies promoting data extraction and exploitation. It threatens data sovereignty, that is, our ability and autonomy to make decisions about the production and use of our own data. We also observe an increasing academic platformization, in which large publishing companies have been transforming themselves into large data oligopolies, selling data services to our research assessment and funding institutions. This is another topic to discuss. We have lots of research about this in our research group. These aspects and their respective safeguards and protocols need to be considered in citizen science projects. We need to deal and avoid the risk of data extraction and the academic exploitation of social knowledge, especially of communities in social vulnerability situation. At the same time, digital exclusion persists, affecting several regions and social groups who remain without adequate access to the internet and become even more vulnerable to the communication and information infrastructures of big tech. In the Amazon, a Starlink of Elon Musk has penetrated local community, indigenous communities, is a big, big danger. Finally, the expansion of citizen science initiative raises new challenges at the institutional level. Oops. Citizen science has gained visibility in public policy and international organizations' agendas. But the lack of financial support and institutional sustainability to citizen science persists. Many initiatives and projects are discontinued due to lack of support. This requires that citizen science be acknowledged and rewarded by research, evaluation, and funding systems. Nevertheless, it is necessary to avoid institutional models that create rigid criteria for what defines a project as citizen science and inhibit its diversity of meanings, formats, agendas, and proponents. Supporting citizen science requires institutional innovation to recognize and support experimentation by citizen initiatives, recognizing that citizen science is a concept under construction. In Brazil, citizen science initiatives are attracting increasing attention since the end of the first decade of this century. In 2021, the Brazilian Citizen Science Network was created, and today it brings together more than 400 participants. In 2022, the Citizen Science platform, CIVIS, was launched by the Brazilian Institute of Information and Science Technology, which is my institution. CIVIS has registered more than 200 citizen science initiatives and projects in Latin America, more than a half of which in Brazil. And I invite you to visit the platform. It is also in English and Spanish. About half of the projects at CIVIS deal with biodiversity and environmental conservation. 1/3 of them deal with marine, coastal, and river environments. For example, the citizen science for the Amazon program developed by the Aliança Águas Amazônicas, Amazon Waters Alliance, which mobilizes local fishing communities to generate information about fish and water quality in the region. The Coadapta Litoral aims to articulate local knowledge of communities in coastal areas in risk and vulnerability situations with scientific knowledge, using scientific knowledge to enhance their adaptation to climate risks and community-based strategies of risk management. Other topics include bird watching, such as WikiAvis. It's the biggest platform of Brazilian birds, which receives photographic and sound recordings, texts about bird species, and promotes exchanges between bird watchers. Sky observation, for example, the Brazilian Meteor Observation Network, with the participation of volunteers and partnerships with teaching and research institutions. Wild animals and disease vectors, such as the Wildlife Health Information System developed by the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation. It is the biggest research and health institution in Brazil, also produce vaccines. It's a very important health institution in Brazil. Solid waste, prevention and mitigation of social environmental disasters, for example, the Semadem Education Project, which mobilizes young people, mainly in schools and local communities, to build knowledge and act to prevent disaster risks. This is a very interesting project. Que lama é essa? What mud is this? It has been promoted because of mining then collapse in Minas Gerais, at the southeast of Brazil. Local communities collect mud contaminated mud and asked the help of university and research institutions to analyze this mud and to help them to provide for their rights because of the results, the implications of this disaster. Citizen science in education activities, for example, the interinstitutional program for citizen science in school. This is an initiative launched during the COVID pandemic in slums, favelas. They produce much data and information about the contamination, deaths in these communities. And finally, as a final remark, this is a project that Germana mentioned, the National Institute of Citizen Science. Is a 4-year program with 50 researchers in Brazil and some of different other countries. We have 7 research lines and research and action lines, co-production methodologies, technologies, tools and infrastructures, data governance and protocols, capacity building, diffusion and communication, theoretical framework, national and international collaboration. As a final remark, I would stress that we need to promote broad dialogue within and beyond science. Such conversation indicates developing from ethics of coexistence between different epistemological matrices towards a perspective of polyphony, understanding democracy as heterogeneous force, not only as a system of representation, but above all as resonance boxes. This requires not only that we respect differences, but that we honor divergences, that we understand communication in its etymological sense of becoming common, common as an encounter in difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sarita Albagli, for your inspiring presentation. And I invite you all to Q&A. There is, can we, yeah, thank you. This is the QR code if you want to contribute with questions. We already have some, so Sarita, one of the questions is interesting and I think pretty important is how can public engagement, actually is I'll start with the fundings. Yeah, here, sorry. Who should be funding the citizen science? Is it cities and regions or scientific organizations or research funders? What model would be appropriate?
I would say, oops.
I think it's working, yeah.
I would say all of them. We have NGOs funding citizen science research, depending on the topic of the problem, the region. And nowadays we are becoming to bring this discussion to funding research institutions. In Brazil, the National Research Council and CAPES, which funds the postgraduate system. We are having a big discussion about how to fund citizen science, because we have not only the traditional way of doing research, but citizen science projects need other support in field work, in communication strategies, in involving non-scientists in this project. So it's kind of rupture that innovation, as I said, in funding research institution. We have also at the international level, Europe, you have big programs to fund citizen science. Nowadays, we are trying to develop international cooperation to do that. And also crowdfunding, also it exists, but it's not the ideal because we know that there is a limiting space. Many citizen science projects begin and are interrupted because they don't have sufficient infrastructure to continue. And this is a problem because they produce important data and these data are lost. And you have to create an infrastructure, and we are now trying to do that at IBICT and also in cooperation of the European Union to build an infrastructure that can storage and give access to these multiple data that are produced in citizen science.
Thank you. Another question from Richard Holman. Do you see the open science and engagement movements as complementary or the same? If they're different, what do you see as the key distinctions?
I normally say that we don't have one open science movement. We have a set of open science movements, and they begin from different origins. The open access, the data access, the software, free and open software, the citizen science and public engagement in science. So we have different movements that they have their own origins, and they are gathering these efforts to give a new meaning to the idea of openness and open science. So we know that there is a big resistance nowadays in terms of open science. This is a big debate because the term open has been appropriated, including by big companies such as the big editorial boards, selling the idea that open science and open access to literature, scientific literature, you have to pay to publish in open access. In Latin America, we have a long tradition of, as you said, the diamond line of open access that you don't pay to publish, neither to read. Mm-hmm. But I think we have this convergence, but it's not well established. We usually say that there is the traditional knowledge and the scientific knowledge. One should, the scientific is transition and the other is tradition. But the scientific knowledge and the scientific communities are very, very conservative, very, very traditional. So to change this mindset is very, very difficult. But I think as the democratic values spread and give new meanings of democracy, as I said, not only as a representative system, I think citizen science and public engagement and open science are more and more connected.
Thank you, Sarita. Another question. How can public engagement practitioners most effectively support citizen science projects to be successful for everyone?
This would mean that there is a public engagement movement different from the citizen science movement. I really don't know as we should make this kind of different. There are different origins, different groups, different terms, different literatures. But at the end, many of these concepts and terms, they converge, I think. There is a field in terms of, I think you don't have to dispute terms. This term is better than the other. For instance, in the US, they changed the name of the association from citizen science to participatory science. And for me, for example, I think citizen is a stronger word than participatory, because participatory can participate in something done, as it is. And the idea of citizenship and build citizenship for me is a stronger idea, as I said, connected to rights, the struggle for rights. So I don't know if I would know how to answer this question. Maybe you for public engagement could help. Thank you.
How many of the examples, let me see if it's this one, yes. How many of the examples you gave in your presentation were initiated by community rather than researchers, and how can this be encouraged? How can we encourage the community to start a citizen science project?
Many of these initiatives began by local communities. Co-Adapta, for instance, the Que Lama é Essa, let me remember, the Meteor Observatory, and I think to encourage is first to recognize the existence, that these initiatives have to have an importance, and they should be supported and be recognized as something meaningful that produce relevant knowledge, data, information, and perspectives. This is, I think, the first step. And then, of course, support these initiatives either by cooperation with more established institutions, scientific and other institutions that can help and can be helped by them. And also by, as I said, policy and funding institutions. I think we are going through this way, but of course, political changes in our countries, in our regions, affect the support that this kind of initiative can have. In Brazil, we had Bolsonaro period, Trump period, and this kind of thing. There are systems that sometimes they need government, public support, but they also need to have some autonomy that can resist from political instability and political changes.
Sarita, question by Brian Trench. What are the social and professional factors that encourage or discourage scientists' participation in citizen and open science?
Mm-hmm. I think they are different in this. For instance, as I said, there is a big debate nowadays about open access and open data. Normally we say that you have to open as far as you need, but also as you want, something like that. You have to have the conditions to do that protected from, as Elinor Ostrom pointed, the free riders, the opportunistic behaviors that take this common, this social knowledge, data, information, and then privatize it. So we have to create political protocols, institutional conditions that protect the common, protect the social. And first, then you have also scientific communities need to be encouraged in terms of to be rewarded by the assessment system. That when they developed this kind of project, this is part of their job. What they produce is relevant, is considering in the moment that you assess and evaluate and you distribute resources, financial resources. So, and also, of course, there is a culture mindset that you have to change. Where normally We normally think in terms of the idea of authorship, individual authorship. We are the authors of our articles, the system of intellectual property rights, this kind of thing. And we are trying to go in direction of idea of collective authorship, collective interests. So it's a distinction in terms of the mindset of our production.
Another question, switching the term citizen scientist around, do you think the scientific community should learn to be or act more like citizens in their daily work?
I personally don't like the term citizen scientist because this has this duality. And the scientists are citizen, then citizen can. So I don't like, but as I put in that slide, there is a big debate. What is the best name? Volunteers, they say, I'm doing free work. I'm being explored. I'm working for you, and I am volunteer. And each label, each term has this own debate. So the question is, again, if I think the learning process is a very huge challenge. We are when.
The question is if scientists should act as citizens more rather than citizens acting as scientists.
Yeah, as a citizen. Yeah, in terms of the scientists. Feel like a citizen, and as a citizen, they should be more concerned about social problems. I think the learning process is a huge challenge because when normally we talk about communication in science and technology, we not think in terms of a mutual listening and mutual learning, the traditional conception. I know that there is a big debate in this field, but the idea of citizen science more the producing something new in terms of different contributions from different knowledge actors, knowledge systems that can produce together or the new knowledge, or reinforce or give visibility to some knowledge that was invisible. So to learn and to teach how to listen, and in the Amazon, I have been working on social bioeconomy in the Amazon region with local communities. They say, you listen to us, but you don't hear. And we don't want nothing for us without us, is another label. So we have to, and sometimes the scientific researcher go to a community and can't see the novelty there, can't see what is there that's very rich, and you cannot see because you cannot understand the beauty and the richness of that knowledge. So it's, as I said, a huge culture and mindset change.
Thank you, Sarita. Are there entry points for citizen science into policy?
Any?
Entry points from citizen science into policy.
Key points.
Entry.
Entry points.
Yes. How can we transform the results of citizen science into policy?
As I said, it's not only about how to collect data. People are just normally focused on how to collect, how to mobilize to collect, but then how, as I said, to storage in an open and fair way. And then how to use them and how to influence the decision-making process. And normally the political world not only the scientific world, the political world, not only don't give the sufficient attention, but sometimes discredit the inputs that are being produced. And sometimes because this production can put these power structures, challenge these power structures. For instance, the initiative Que Lama É Essa, What Mud Is This. The political system, local political system in Minas Gerais, connected with the mining corporations' interests, they tried to discredit as far as they could the data that was produced by this initiative, including when the research and university groups tried to analyze the contamination of this mud, and it was so strong, this opposition, that they had to send these samples to other states because there they could not be the safety enough to use the data produced from this analysis. So give visibility, not only give visibility to the inputs produced by citizen science initiatives, but also not to hidden them, because sometimes they can put, when you, for instance, you shows that water quality is bad in a certain area, or the quality of air, or the problem of solid waste, many problems that public system and even the private sector don't give enough importance. And so this data, this knowledge challenge the political system. So it's also a political struggle. So as I said, it's not sufficient to have good methodologies, participatory, but if you want to influence political sphere, you have political struggle involved.
Thank you, Sarita. I'm afraid we don't have any more time. We're going to have other sessions starting now. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity
Albagli.
to be here.
We have many other questions. I encourage you to talk directly to Sarita during the break.